Harshan Lamabadasuriya and Paul Allen commenting on the second semi-final, which is in game two. So it's Jesse Day playing Kevin McMahon. Jesse is 31. He's been playing Scrabble since 2003, approximately 15 years, and Kevin's about the same actually, since 2002. So I'm not 100% sure who won game one actually.
Jesse.
Jesse won game one. So it looks like Kevin's starting. He's drawn some really nice rack, as you can see. So he's going to want to
Lucigen or whatever.
play the optimal bingo from that rack. It's harder with the blank
Yeah.
on the rack.
Yeah.
It's easier to make a mistake with the blank on your rack. So this means that he should probably take slightly longer to find the best bingo, the high scoring bingo, the positionally best bingo.
Well, I might disagree with that. I think just play something very quickly. There's probably not going to be much of a difference between anything that doubles the C.
Mm-hmm.
So just play one of them fairly quickly, I would say, and move on. That would be my attack.
So positionally, Clowing looks very good. It inhibits parallel plays. It scores the highest possible score, and that's been played very quickly. Pecan famously took
Indeed, yeah.
10-15 minutes on his first move, deciding where to play. Was it Arius or something?
Yes, Arius or Seriate. I was doing the board at the time.
And that really hurt him in the end game. So this the pace of this play is excellent. So Kevin's plopped down the bingo. It's probably the best bingo. It is positionally the best bingo. So job done really. So moving on to Jesse. So immediate thoughts are this is very close to a bingo.
Indeed.
Is there a bingo? Which is the best bingo really? So there's two possible bingos. There's a choice of aeronaut and aeration. Aeronaut through the U of Clowing scores slightly higher, is 62 points, and aeration is 58 points essentially. That's through the I of Clowing. So position, what would you say positionally, Paul? Which do you prefer?
Aeronaut, I think, slightly.
So the question is one better than the other positionally, and is it worth 4 points? That's the question, really.
Oh, sorry. Positionally, probably aeration gives less away on the left-hand side, but it's probably worth 4 points just to play aeronaut at first glance.
Yeah, I would agree with that, really. So it'll be interesting to see how long Jesse takes to make this decision. I don't think it'll take him too long to see the two bingos. It'll be interesting to see how long how much time he burns. Yeah, fine. He's not going to burn very much time at all, really, which again is the right thing to do. Bank up some time for a potentially difficult endgame. Okay, and Quacker likes Jesse's choice. Scores are 74 to Kevin, 62 to Jesse, and it's Kevin's turn. Kevin's got quite a clunky rack. It probably won't take him very long to make sure he's not missing any bingos. That's going to be his first priority. That should be everyone's, I think, initial thought process on turn. Is there a bingo? Am I sure there isn't a bingo? And you can move on then once you make sure of that. You can move on and start thinking about decision making. So he's probably moved on already. Fine. So in terms of choices, in principle, you can think of this in a number of different ways. What is the ideal leave from this rack? In an ideal world, what tiles would I like to keep the most? So the ideal leave is probably score, playing WG. That's one way to look at it. And then the second way to look at it is what's the highest possible score on this board? Okay, what's the highest possible score? And then the third thing is positionally, what's the best move? And the best choice is usually a compromise. So Kevin's compromise playing WOG, which scores very well at the cost of the leave not being quite as good as score. But Quacker likes that choice, basically. Quacker likes the balance between score, board. WOG's quite defensive, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah, I think we all have to agree on WOG. I think
I think it's a clear-cut decision, really. Fine. And then what do you think of Jesse's choices, Paul?
Well, it's the classic awkwardness of the WU.
So this doesn't look anything like a bingo. Some players would inactively look for a bingo. Others would individually know there's absolutely no bingo here and just move on, really. Harder to do that with 8s than 7s. choices are scoring, burning the S and scoring. So 10B quids that scores 48. WA isn't the best leave, but it's actually quite a good scoring leave. So there's a difference between scoring leaves, things you can utilize hotspots for in a consistent way, and then you have bingo leaves, which are likely to lead to bingos, which are a bit hit and miss. So although WA is not a good bingo leave, it's quite a decent scoring leave actually. And then quids is the highest scoring choice. Actually, a quid scores one more. So it'll be we are talking about playing that onto aeronauts. Now playing this is a really tricky decision, isn't it, Paul? What's the problem with playing quids onto aeronauts?
Well, squids obviously is the obvious hook.
Yes, and
equids.
Equids.
Yeah.
So the major issue with going for this choice, it creates a hugely volatile, high-scoring opening.
Yes. Yeah.
If a opponent plays a bingo onto the first row, it's going to be a massive bingo. It's going to be a very high-scoring bingo, and even non-bingo moves or choices are going to be very high-scoring.
Yes, it's a lose-lose. If it's a bonus on the hook of equids or squid, it's a huge loss. Or if the opponent has rubbish, they can get a reasonable score.
On the positive side, there is a chance, albeit a low chance, that the opponent will neither have an E or an S on your rack, and if that's the case, your quid's in, aren't you?
But this is 16. There's 16 E's and S's, so that's next to zero.
So he's keeping a selfish hook. He's keeping an E. There's a small chance. He'll be able to use it. And as it happens on the simulation, Quacker likes quids. Quids is better than the alternatives, which are due at D4. And wed at D2. So Quacker likes quids on simulation, 2-ply.
I think Jesse won't like doing that. He'll have felt forced into doing that because there wasn't anything better. He won't like leaving that position, but he had to.
So the difference in score between quids and the next best choice is 48 compared to 26, which is a massive 22 points, really.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to give up 22 points of board position.
Sometimes you're forced into playing a move that you don't like simply because it's the other moves are worse.
Yeah. So moving on, so Kevin, he's close to a bingo. I don't think there's 7 there. So he's going to be completely and utterly focused on the hotspot that Jesse's just created. He's going to be quite worried about it. He's going to worry that Jesse might have kept back an E or an S to utilize it next turn. But it's easy to get distracted in this situation.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing here is this is how it's worked out in Jesse's favour. He's taken the risk and it's worked out for him because Kevin will now have to blow quite a lot of his nice bonus tiles in taking up that spot for not a great deal.
Yeah.
So Jesse's won out in this. It could have been a lot worse for Jesse than it's turned out.
So a common mistake in this situation is to get too focused on the equids and squids opening, and for example, to miss 8-letter words elsewhere on the board.
Yes.
To lose your focus. And in general terms, it's better to think things in a particular order if you can. Am I sure that I'm not missing an 8 or a 7, and then you can move on to what's the next best move, basically. So Kevin's thinking about Erica. That's not a bad option at all. The leave of SR is nice. Another vowel would be ideal, but you can't have everything. And as it happens, that is Quacker's top choice, and it simulates reasonably well.
But he still has to have gotten. There was lovely bonus potential there, which he's actually got to get rid of. Although he scored, the bonus potential is largely gone. So I'm not criticising the move, but Jesse's forced him into doing that.
So the principle here is, generally speaking, you can either choose to play go short or play long. So the fewer tiles you play, the more control you have. And if you're keeping bonus-friendly trials, the higher the probability that you'll bonus next turn. The more tiles you play, usually the higher you score, but then your probability of hitting a bingo next turn is compromised.
Indeed, it's always a compromise. Yeah,
it's always a compromise. Okay, so Erica's best, and then so the scores are 1-4-1 to Kevin, and 1-10 to Jesse, but Jesse's on turn. Jesse does not look like he's got a bingo. So he is trying to think as to what the best equity play is here. There's an obvious hotspot on the top left corner of the board, which he has utilized. So Quackle there's lots of different ways of playing in the same place, lots of different choices. Shall we simulate it actually and see how it comes out? just click simulate. Okay. So options are playing WWK, week or walk or book. They're very, very, very close to each other. Nothing to choose really. So again, the standard of play so far has been exceptional.
Yes,
it's been very, very good.
Yes. Yes.
So Kevin's got a choice of bonuses, and it's a question of deciding which one's best, really.
I wonder, will he think about cluings?
So the interesting thing about this position is that if Kevin chooses to play right, he's not going to even think about it. So cluings would allow pre-sort, which is the high-scoring potential word on this board, but unfortunately, cluings is a phony. So Kevin's not wasted very much time at all thinking about that, and he's plopped down a bingo onto the A of Erica. Yeah. So Jesse is played really quickly. So Jesse is very well known as quite a slow, deliberate player. But when the occasion demands, when it's very clear that there's very obvious candidate move, which is far, far better than anything else, he is capable of conserving time early by playing quickly, and he's done so. So current scores are 2-1-5 to Kevin and 2-2-4 to Jesse, and Kevin's on turn.
So nice close game. That's what we wanted after the last one. That's interesting. All the most of the scoring spots have been taken up. So it's a different challenge at the moment. How to control the board.
So this board's quite interesting in that it's relative to open to 8-letter bingos, relatively, but it's really hard to score anything at all using shorter words.
Yes.
So it's interesting in that way, actually. And it'll be very interesting to see how this game develops. So with the benefit of hindsight, cluing was actually a very defensive bingo, quite apart from the fact that it scored the best it could score. It was it doesn't take any hooks. The floaters on the G is it's a terrible floater, the G actually. The G is an extremely bingo unfriendly tile. Most people don't think of it that way. It's a terrible tile as a floater and as in terms of bingo potential. So cluing has actually had quite a large effect on how the rest of this game is going to play out, which is often the case with with your first move, choice of first move.
Yeah. But now we've got huge space, top right, top left. Sorry, top right, bottom left, but no real scoring positions.
And the interesting thing is the scores are level, so it's really, really tricky to know whether it's best to keep the board wide open in case your opponent bingos and you need a wide open board to recover from the bingo, or whether to close it and to reduce the probability of your opponent bingoing. But then if they do bingo despite your play, you're in a worse situation.
Well, 5 is quite interesting, possibly. 5 would be, 25? It would almost completely kill the 3 floaters that Harson's talked about, the ING. Make a bonus virtually, very unlikely less onto the G. And it leaves strong bonus potential of a do mat. Not necessarily for next turn, but possibly the turn after.
So if 5 goes down in terms of bonuses onto the G, it's pretty much going to be all ING ending bonuses.
Well, it does open a 7 with NYE
sure.
and so on, but quite restrictive.
And there are, how many eyes have been played so far actually? So just the 1 eye on the board, right? So there are 8 eyes outstanding, and there are 4 ends outstanding.
It's not a particular worry, but in terms of bonus, that would be the most likely. What other options are there apart from 5?
So Quackle's liking the high scoring play, the high scoring option is Doty at G3, essentially. And
yeah,
that's
simply to score.
That's basically playing parallel to OWE and KOR.
Leaving FAM, which is fine. Yeah.
And the second option is Fumado at C9, and that's using the U of Equids. But that's a lot more open than Doty and scores less. FAM after Doty, it's not a. I mean, it's again, it's a good scoring leave, but it's not a good bingo leave. Yeah. But having said that, this board is not very open to bingos or to scoring. Actually, it's going to get really hard to score on this board very soon.
I think if you're going to try and go for a bonusy leave here, you've got to be patient. It's not going to come next turn. Probably you're going to have to keep working towards the bonus and think long term. So I like Doty of the options we've looked at.
So thinking about the remaining tiles, there's one blank left, 2 S's, and in terms of high-scoring tiles, there's a J and an X essentially. So a lot of so there's essentially, I think this game is going to blow wide open at some point, and it's going to be very, very volatile.
Yep. So it's just on the edge at the moment. It's quite very interesting situation, as Harshan says.
Paul, it's often difficult to know whether to defend or to attack in this situation, isn't it? With the scores level, whether to play an open board or whether to play a closed board.
Well, I think
in this case, Doty seems to be the best choice.
Best of both worlds. It's going to restrict the I. You know, the bonus could be through the I. It still leaves the N, no big deal. G, no big deal. It's going to keep your opponent's scores round probably to the U of Equids. So all round, I think it's got to be Doty. Fumado is going to give away quite a lot of potential score.
Yeah, I think it's positionally inferior and it scores less as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's worth thinking about time at this point. So Kevin's got 13 minutes left, and Jesse, unusually for him at this stage in the game, has 19 minutes left, and that might be crucial if it's a close end game. So Kevin spotted Doty. It's very easy to miss. It's a multiple overlap, very easy to miss. Well done, Kevin.
Yeah, I think that's the best play. I think Kevin's been playing.
So the scores are Kevin's 252 and Jesse's 224. So Jesse's trailing by 28.
So in a game a long time ago, I made a phony of KORI, and I learned that every vowel except I goes after.
Okay, so Jesse's got a 7. He's got bingo friendly tiles. He's going to be they're checking the score now. All right, sorry, hold on.
Okay.
It's been challenged.
Koro presumably.
Yeah. Presumably.
Okay. It's quite unusual for a top player to challenge a 4, but it does happen now and again. It's a slight doubt, and it could the whole game could hinge on it. I remember David Eldar challenging a 4. I think it was Celt when winning the title. It does happen occasionally.
So the interesting thing about that is that your memory plays funny tricks on you when you're under pressure and when you're stressed.
Indeed, yes. If he were going through card boxing or something, he would knock off Koro in less than half a second. But we've all done it. Depends on the context. But that 5 points could be crucial given how close it is.
Absolutely. So, I mean, one of the negative things about challenging unsuccessfully is that if you're not careful, you might spend the rest of the game worrying about losing the end game by less than 5 points, basically.
Well, I think, I don't think top players tend not to think that way. They'll just keep on playing. They'll put it behind them.
Yeah.
It's only 5 points. It shouldn't make a difference. They'll just get on with the game.
So Jesse is basically seeing his winning line as getting a bingo down on this board, and he's therefore opened the board.
Yeah, very attacking move. The problem is that with an E, that's very easily blockable, and then that would restrict Jesse to, even if he gets a bonus, it would be a single. It wouldn't even be doubled, presumably.
So the scores are 239 to Jesse and 257 to Kevin, and Kevin's on turn. So Kevin's going to be worried that Jesse's close to a bingo based on Jesse's last play of 2 tiles and him opening the board, really. So his thought process is going to be, how can I defend this position? He's got a small lead. It's very easy to lose this size of lead trying to defend a bingo.
Indeed. And sometimes you've got to decide, with the likes of DA, you're thinking he must have very much like a Reed's rack as he's actually left. And you might consider letting the bonus go. In other words, I won't defend. I'll just let him get, say, a 60-point bonus, which I can then recover from. So that's one of your options. in a way not defending, just trying to defend against a hefty bonus. So he might, because it's very difficult for him to block everything here. You know, the N and the G and the Da hook.
So one of the principles in Scrabble is that often it's very difficult to stop your opponent bingoing entirely, but you can force them to bingo where you want them to bingo
and
for
score
face
less.
value and
exactly,
face value.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I think this is a very good example of that. It's assuming that Jesse has kept something like reeds and picked 2 reasonable tiles. It's going to be very difficult to stop him bonusing. So he may not put all his energy into doing that.
So often when you try to control the board and when you try to block a potential bingo, you're compromising on score and you're compromising on your leave. So if you do that and your opponent bingos anyway, that's a very bad outcome.
Exactly, yes. And here it's just it's so difficult to some boards you could make it very difficult to block even with beautiful tiles. Here I don't think that's the case.
Yeah. So with the inference on the simulation, Quackle quite likes Fig at J6.
Well, there's another way to look at this. If you're not going to defend the bonus and you play something like Fig, leaving a good bonus potential leave, how much counterplay you're going to get from their bonus?
Yeah. So if you play Fig, your expectations are that the opponent will either bingo under ID and DA or will parallel Figs really. So if and after Figs, you're going to have a reasonably balanced rack, a bit vowel heavy, but reasonably balanced.
The problem I see is with a very good rack, the bonus is likely to come under id and da.
Sure.
And once you played Fig, you won't have any floaters to play through.
Yeah. So Kevin's decided to restrict the position under DA and score reasonably well. And the compromise in doing that is that his leave isn't the best, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, that's most likely restricted the bonus
but it
score.
might give a higher scoring bonus.
Although it's given, idea, it's given a chance of, say, of 70-80 play.
Yeah. So actually, it might, yeah.
In fact, this is even more. But that's quite lucky that it's fitted in so well.
Yeah.
I think Kevin was hoping that he'd just have to play off Ide.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that, Amy. I think that's, in my opinion, that's Kevin's first slight mistake. But we shall see.
So experienced tournament players will tell you that this is a very common occurrence. So you try to block your opponent's bingo and you give them a better bingo.
Yes,
if you get it
or
wrong.
A high yes, indeed.
If you get it wrong.
Yes. You make more restrictions, but then you get overlaps and the opponent will get extra score.
I don't think you got it wrong. I think it was the right 5.
Okay, possibly, yeah.
If you could just wait a bit closer.
Do you know what he's challenging here?
So I think Arakas has been challenged,
yeah.
and it's good. So there'll be it'll be +5 for that. So after the unsuccessful challenge and the bingo, the scores are going to be 2-7-7 to Kevin, and 3-3-5 to Jesse. So he's just going to be what's that? He's going to be 58 behind.
Okay. He's been quite lucky here picking the X, but it's going to go nicely under the EX.
So Jesse is actually drawing from a bag which looks very bingo friendly, apart from a couple of V's. It'll be interesting to see what he picks up.
Ooh, looking nice. Yeah.
Interesting. So we should concentrate on Kevin's options, which seem to be concentrated on playing the X under Sedator. That doesn't appear to be anything significantly better. Quacker likes just simply AX under Sedator.
It's got to be, I think.
And what's just happened is we think a good example of the purest form of luck in Scrabble, drawing 7 random tiles from the bag after playing a bingo.
Indeed.
And those tiles forming another bingo.
Yes, because you can get 7 consonants, you can get 7 vowels, or you can get a bonus. So
the post bingo
so
pickup is the purest form of luck in Scrabble.
It's where the most luck comes into play. Yes,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. Yeah. Now X, this is less risky than it has to be X anyway, but the giveaway is less than it normally would be because we've had so many O's played.
So the scores after is 329, 335. Jesse. So Jesse appears to be playing really quickly in this game, actually.
Well, I think he's had some quite straightforward moves, like leaning. It's great. Not only do you score, you save time as well, and put your opponent under time pressure. So it's a double whammy.
The only floors you've got there are ones that were already out there.
So this puts Jesse in a very strong position.
Yeah. So Jesse's gone up 415 to 329. So he's 86 points ahead. So he's a big bingo ahead, really, and on quite a restrictive board. So this is quite a tight spot to be in. Not only does he have to open the board and score, but he's got to balance a terrible rack as well at the same time.
Yeah, at least he's got a scoring spot under Ta.
So the obvious move here is just playing Rifty to the bottom left triple, leaving II. Don't think Kevin's going to take too long over doing it.
No, I mean, you don't want to keep II, but you've no option. It's the big score. And that's, depending on Jesse's rack, he may struggle to score next move. You never know. Because there's no particular scoring spot once you take out the bottom left.
So in terms of decision making in this situation, you have to score adequately. If you don't score adequately, even if you do end up bingoing, it won't be enough to catch up.
Yes, there'd be no point in, say, for example, getting rid of FYII, keeping Rit. You'd be too far behind, like Harson says, at that time. And you'd have left the bottom left. So he's got to play Rifty. But there's plenty of space. It's not like the board's clogged up. There's space for Kevin to come back here. So he won't be panicking yet.
So quite apart from the technical side of remaining within range of your opponent, I think that if you close the gap, it affects your opponent psychologically. Yes. I think they are likely to play slightly differently with a 100-point lead than with a 70-point lead or a 60-point lead. So there are human factors involved, I think, in keeping within range.
Presumably Rifty was being challenged rather than Tay.
So after Rifty, so Kevin is 376 and Jesse is 415. So we are 39 points behind, essentially, well within range of a bingo.
Yeah, it may not even take. Sometimes it's very easy a mistake to make, even amongst top players, is to feel you need to bonus when there's plenty of time, there's plenty of space to get that score back if things fall your way and are difficult for your opponent. I think we've all made the mistake of going too much for bonus when we've got this up deficit.
So I think a crucial tile that's outstanding in the bag is the blank. There's one blank out and there's an S out. It is quite a restrictive board, but it wouldn't be that difficult to get a bingo down on this board. So quite often what happens in this situation is that the player ahead tries to defend a bingo, and in the process they don't score very much, and the opponent manages catch up without playing a bingo.
Yes, yeah.
That quite often happens.
And here, with the board, there's so much space on the right-hand side, it's very difficult to close it down. So there can be plenty. It's not like maybe one or two opportunities to play a bonus. You'll probably get 4, 5, 6 from this point onwards.
So the problem, so Jesse's probably thinking about should I try to outrun, although actually scoring on this board is getting increasingly difficult.
Yes, it's
or should I defend?
The scores are going to come from bonuses. You're going to get fairly low scores. The anticipation is low scores with non-bonus moves here. They'll be more tactical than scoring.
So Jesse's thinking of playing Helving onto the G of leaning. So it scores reasonably well. So it scores. All right, sorry. Onto the G of Lucigen. That looks a good choice, doesn't it, Paul? It does a lot of things at the same time.
Well, yes,
except for the hook.
Yes, indeed. That leaves the shelving and the leanings. If you do that, you're very much it pivoting on who gets the S. I mean, if you get the S, you can kill out shelving.
Yeah.
But if you don't get the S, you're going to be very worried. It's just the one S.
I wonder whether Jesse's thinking of playing Helvings onto the G of leaning instead.
Possibly.
As a positional play.
Now, what that would do, that would give one very good opportunity for a bonus down the right-hand side of Helving, but it's not going to stay there long. If he doesn't play like something like Helving, there'll be many bonus opportunities, which can go on for several moves. Helving is going to shorten the length of moves that can be possible.
So essentially, by playing the lower scoring Helving onto the G of leaning, Jesse's giving his opponent one shot at a bingo,
well,
or maybe
fewer
two shots
yes,
at a bingo.
Yeah, certainly fewer than if he doesn't do something like that.
And then if he misses, it's likely that Jesse will be able to control the board from there.
Indeed, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So although intuitively it looks like Helving onto the cluing G is the play for the score, defensively there might be merit in playing onto the G of leaning.
So the interesting thing about the first choice, the higher scoring Helving onto the G of Lucigen, is that so obviously the opponent has is slightly more likely to use the hook
immediately, yes.
because they get first dibs on it.
Indeed.
But that's a small advantage.
But yes, possibly less likely to use it long term.
So there's a relatively small loss of equity, but a massive increase in volatility.
Potentially, yeah. So it's quite a difficult situation. Does he have, what's his high score here? How about what are the score options?
So Helving onto the G of cluing is the high scoring word on this board. Options are limited. So Bile, which overlaps leaning, scores equally. They both score 24. So Bile. So what do you think of Bile, Paul?
Well, what's the vowel consonant balance like in the bag at the moment?
So 20 tiles unseen, and of them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9 of the 20 are vowels. So slightly under half.
Right. If there'd been fewer vowels, Bile is horrible because you've got HNV and you could lose by simply being in not having vowel problems. But with that's a higher percentage of vowels than normal.
Yeah.
You should, if you play 4 tiles, you should get probably 2 if it's 9 out of 20. You'd probably be okay. So Bile is not unreasonable. I don't like it, but it's not unreasonable.
So it's often useful to think about what your opponent might do next after Bile. So it's likely they'll either bingo onto the N or G of cluing if they have a bingo.
Indeed.
Or if they don't have a bingo, it's likely they'll overlap Bile towards the right side of the board to create another hook or more floaters.
We don't really have to worry about score. Other than a bonus, there's virtually no score coming after. Well, maybe leanings with a big consonant on the double letter above, but there's not too much of a scoring worry. It's a bonus worry you have to think about.
So if Jesse plays Bile, he's going to end up trying to defend, the right side of the board after that. The opponent's likely to play to the right.
Yes.
The N and G of cluing is going to remain open. And then Jesse will have to worry in the future about closing off whatever hooks are created from the parallel play above Bile. Fine. So Jesse's gone for the sudden death option.
Yes.
So Jesse's thinking, let's give Kevin one shot at a bingo. If he doesn't bingo immediately, I'm going to control the board.
Yeah. The slight problem here is that that side of Helving will be open, and now potentially Kevin could open up the bottom underneath leaning, and give himself 2 spots.
Yeah.
But then eventually space is going to run out.
Yeah. And it may be that Jesse is thinking of turning over 6 tiles to get the blank and the S, which are outstanding.
Yeah, he also blocks leanings.
Yeah.
Otherwise, leanings would have sat there for some time and been hard to block.
So we have news that Nigel has just won his second game against Brett Smitherham. So that means Nigel's 2-0 up in the other semi-final. So I think Kevin's holding Jesse on Helving. He's thinking about challenging it. He's got to be a bit careful not to burn too much of his time on this decision, because I think he's going to need a lot of time for the end game. Oh no, sorry, my mistake. Jesse was
holding. Yeah,
Jesse was double checking. Sorry, my mistake.
Yeah, it's a very interesting pivotal move. I don't think many players would have considered Helving there, but it certainly has its merits. Now, how about something like Uni? Might be quite interesting. Just to open. Are the scores correct? How far is Kevin behind at the moment, Harshan?
So the scores are 430 to Jesse, 3762 to Kevin, essentially. So that's 54 different.
Right. So it's getting to the stage where Kevin really has to work pretty much entirely for a bonus.
So ideally, Kevin wants to simultaneously. So the ideal leave from this rack is SNIT. So ideally, Kevin wants to play UIV and open the board, but that's going to be nearly impossible to do. So he's got to compromise.
Right. There's an interesting play. You could play something like. Well, pity about the blank. Well, you still could play. You could play something like Love. If you had Tines, you might consider Love difficult to block otherwise. If he were further behind, I would still quite like it, but he doesn't need to be that desperate yet, I don't think. So how's he going to open, you reckon?
So one option is to play Uni. So in terms of scoring, if so there's two ways of doing this. Yeah. So Kevin can plan on catching up without a bingo.
Yeah, I think that's unlikely. But
and score heavily. So there are 14 tiles unseen, which means there's 7 tiles in the bag. So it's getting close to the end. So there's two options for Kevin. He can expect that Jesse will carry on closing the board and defending, and he can hope that he can catch up without a bingo, assuming that Jesse's going to compromise on score. The second option, which is the more likely option, which is probably a better winning line, is to hope to ideally out bingo, go out on the last turn. So he's got to mold the board to make it more likely for him to do that. So in terms of opening the board, he's going to have to compromise. But one possibility is playing UNI onto just parallel to the N of Helving. So that leaves. So he's got a T on his rack, and actually he's got the case T by the look of things. So Jesse won't be able to, and he's got the case S as well.
Goodness. Now he's done it. That's exactly what suggested. I didn't think he had to be that desperate yet, but it's an interesting move.
So from Kevin's point of view, if Jesse doesn't have the blank, this is going to be an extremely difficult opening to block effectively.
Yeah. And it was a do or die. If Jesse's got the blank, he basically Kevin loses.
And that's the so Quackle really likes that choice. It's simulating top. But interestingly, the win percentage to the end of the game, let's just see what it is. For over 2 turns, it's only 16% after Love.
It's not, and I think the problem here is, with due respect to Quackle, it won't quite know how to block quite as well as Jesse will.
So one of the really good things about Love is that Jesse is going to be forced to play around Love to try and block it. But Kevin's got tiles compatible with the G of cluing.
Yes.
He's got potential bingos ending in ING.
And he can't block both top and bottom of the V. He'll try, but that would probably leave a 2-tile overlap top and bottom possibly.
So there are 5 tiles in the bag. So Jesse, whatever he does to block Love, he's got to either play ideally play 3 or 4 tiles, ideally.
So remind us what's in the bags, Harshan.
So blank F, 3 I's, JLM, NOST.
Right. Very interesting situation.
So Jesse is thinking of playing HABU, which restricts words ending in S, but does not restrict words starting with S.
He would like to, if possible, block the ing possibilities. I'm not sure. Is that feasible for him to play a 5 through the H or something like that? Or even a 4. Even a 4.
So this is a good example of what you when you can infer something, what your opponent's rack might be. I think Jesse is certain that Kevin's got the S or the blank on his rack. Although it's possible he's bluffing, it's possible it's a Hail Mary, but less likely, much less likely. Much less likely.
But if he's, from Jesse's point of view, with the S and the blank, he'd be very worried. He'd be very worried at this point.
So I think Jesse's got to be thinking that if Kevin's got the S and the blank, it's going to be very difficult for him to win the game regardless.
Yes.
So it might be a good heuristic to believe that he would pick up either the S or the blank after playing whatever he's going to play to win. Otherwise, it's a done deal anyway. So he might want to infer that.
And then one option there is to actually open up again, assuming he gets one of them, and then maybe scores his way out as a counter to the Love's bonus.
So Jesse, so currently the scores are 432, 382. So Jesse is 48 ahead. So even if Kevin were to bingo onto, okay, so he's gone for Habu. He's played 3 tiles. That's going to leave 2 in the bag. It restricts words ending in S onto loves. And he's got a shot at picking up the blank if it's in the pool, basically.
Yeah. And it gives him a big enough lead. He could possibly come back from bonuses onto the G, for example.
Yeah, which would be face value mostly. Yeah.
Now, it's a pity that Kevin can't play a single I at the bottom. Something like NI. NI would be perfect if it weren't, but...
Quick piece of information. Nigel and Brett have already started their 3rd game, and they're going to be doing the next one, this one, on the live stream.
Fine. So from Kevin's point of view, he's not got a 7. He's not got a bingo on this board. Sorry? Sorry, my beg your pardon. So he can play toilings, but the issue with playing toilings is that Jesse might be able to outrun because Kevin's going to be emptying the bag and picking 2 tiles. So the choices are toilings and nightingales, essentially. Nightingales is quite a hard spot because it involves multiple overlaps. And nightingales is by far the better choice. I would say it's quite easy to miss when you're under a huge amount of pressure.
Yes, that happened to me earlier, yes, indeed. That's my excuse anyway.
So I guess this is a good example of the human factors. So you would see you're much more likely to not miss nightingales if you're playing Quackle at home.
Indeed,
much more likely to miss it if you're playing in the semi-final of the World Championship on stream.
Yep. Yeah, Nightingales is lovely in the sense that it scores so much and it restricts the loves spot, which presumably Jesse will have now.
So interestingly, Quackle attributes a win percentage of only 38% to Nightingales, which is interesting.
Maybe because it sets up SH. But there's inference here. Obviously, Jesse didn't have the S when he played Habu.
Sure.
So how many's in the bag now? 2. So
there's 2 in the bag.
So 2 out of 5.
So
Jesse only has a 3 out of 5 chance of having the blank.
So Kevin's best chance of winning is playing Nightingales and having 2 unblockable outplays with the 2 tiles he picks up.
The nominal probability is much higher that Jesse will have the blank, whereas we know it's less because he didn't play it with Habu. We know it's 40% that he doesn't have the blank.
So the alternative to playing Nightingales is not to empty the bag, to play 1 tile, leaving 1 tile in the bag, and hope to out bingo. That's the alternative.
Well, yeah, the trouble with that is
you're behind.
Yeah, you'd really have to
make another opening.
Yeah, and unfortunately there's no, if NI was a word or IB was a word, these would be great. But they still rely on Jesse not having the blank to play loves and a hefty score. So
so if Kevin decides to dump the I, for example, BI of the B of book, Jesse is going to be left with the choice of trying to outrun by hooking the blank onto loves or blocking all the available floaters, which he can probably do by playing through the G, can't he? So Jesse is going to be left with quite a difficult decision if Kevin plays 1 tile.
Well, he could even play 2 tiles. If he plays something like Knit or Nil or something like that, that could leave the potential of 2 bonuses, which are unblockable from Jesse's point of view, and just score enough to win. But I think they all revolve around picking the blank, pretty much. So there's mileage in playing 2 tiles, because there's more chance to pick the blank. Yeah, I think Kevin pretty much has there will be some wins without the blank, but virtually none. Playing 2 tiles increases the chance of getting the blank. I think he has to play 2. So it's counterintuitive, but he has to play 2.
Kevin's down to a minute on his clock. He's running out of time. So he needs to make a decision soon, really. So in this situation, it's probably best to go with the basic heuristic. Either play the bingo or play off 1 tile.
Play 2 tiles. Definitely, definitely 2 tiles, I think. It's got to be 2 tiles.
Okay.
I think that's where we're used to kind of leaving one in the bag and so on, less certainty.
Sure.
But I think here he's got to play 2 tiles.
So Jesse, fine. So the scores are 3-9-4 to Kevin and 4-4-5 to Jesse. So Jesse's 51 points ahead on turn. And because he had some fairly straightforward decisions early on in the game, he's got 6.5 minutes to work out this. So the bag's empty now. So he knows what tiles Kevin's got. So this is a pure endgame situation. So in theory, he should be able to work out a perfect solution to this.
So remind us, what's his lead at this point, Harshan?
So he is 51 points ahead.
Right.
So there's a bingo onto. So Kevin's potentially got a bingo onto the G of cluing, hasn't he? Yep.
Yep.
So Jesse's thinking about blocking that bingo, but if he does, then Kevin's got the alternative of playing Sigil and Loves, essentially.
Yeah. But can he outrun the bonus? He's calculating that at the moment. What's his high score off Loves that we can see?
So he could play Shive off Loves, couldn't he? No, he's not. Sorry, I beg your pardon. He's not got a... So, ship...
Anything for you? This is where you very much want Fui to take an S.
Yeah.
But it don't. And that would be suicide to play it. If he blocks the bonus, he'd have to be out in 2 and score vaguely. But surely you can do that with the blank. You must have enough flexibility to do that. He's got fish and shelving. That's a hefty score.
So fish leaves PEM, doesn't it? So are there 2 outs with PEM? Yeah. So Quackle's preferred endgame sequence is hems and making shelving, hooking the blank onto helving, leaving PIF, and then the out for PIF would be PFUI of the U of Habu.
Yeah.
Is there a second out with PIF?
But I mean, people have different.
But it's going to be very difficult. He can outrun by just playing 2 tiles under him, setting up IF and EF.
I think there's 2 philosophies here about playing the correct endgame and playing a good enough endgame. I think my limited experience of Jesse is he's very happy to be pragmatic and play. At least he did against me. He didn't risk a bonus. He just took the win, and I agree with that. He doesn't need to play the best endgame here. He simply needs to win. Spread's not going to come into this. So as long as he does something like the hems or the fish, that's going to win. Yeah. He doesn't need to play the best end game. He just needs to play a good enough one to win.
I would say that Jesse is very practiced at solving these end games under time pressure. He does this day in, day out, all day, every day. So I think he would probably be feeling less pressure than a lot of other players.
Yeah, I think some players artificially put themselves under pressure to play the correct end game, and they lose because of that. But there are different philosophies on it. He should. I don't think he's going to mess up from here. He'll play one of the correct blocking winning moves.
So the really nice thing about hems is that it gives a threatened out, which is really difficult to block. It'll be blocked with Sigil, but then if Sigil is played, then you can play IF, which has been set up by hems to outrun Sigil.
Yeah.
So there's a threatened outplay, or if that's blocked, there's a high-scoring non-outplay reply.
So do we know with the computer how many wins he has? Stone Cold wins, regardless of what
very large
Kevin
number
does.
of options. All the winning lines involve blocking joisting.
Yeah,
every single one.
So I think he looks to be lining up my fish. which isn't optimal, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It wins. That's all that matters. He might be looking, he'd be just double checking that he hasn't missed anything through the U or something like that.
So Jesse's probably worked out that fish and his next best score outruns Sijo, which is probably going to be Kevin's best reply.
That was exactly my thinking.
Yeah.
It puts him too far ahead. And there's not a lot going. There's not got a lot going with Nit, is there, for Kevin after Sijo?
Yeah. So a basic kind of heuristic in an endgame is that if your opponent has an out, you should always block it, or nearly always block it. And if it's an out bingo, that's even more importantly the case, really. So Fish has achieved that. It scored really well. Ideally, there should be an out with Pem, but in this case, it doesn't matter because he's so far ahead.
Yeah.
So all that matters is that he can outrun Sijo now.
Indeed. Yeah. And he's taken his time. That's again exactly the right thing to do.
So after Fish and Shelving, the scores are 482 to 394. So we are 80. So Jesse is 88 ahead. So he's safe.
Yeah. Yeah. He's very safe.
So I think he just needed to basically block the bingo to win, really.
Well, I mean, they were getting ridiculous. Again, people who worry about spread, if they phony here, would a phony lose? Are we that close? Not that I'm anticipating Jesse phonying, but would that lose?
So Kevin's played the correct move. Sijo. So after Sijo, the scores are 482 to 448. So Jesse is 34 ahead. So Kevin's 448, Jesse's 482.
Yep. Yeah, well played, Jesse.
So I think that was a very well played game on both sides, really.
Yeah, excellent game.
Exceptional, well played, and positionally very interesting.
Yes, I mean a lot of the moves we could see it was the best, and ones that weren't obviously best had their merits.
So the final scores are 496 to Jesse and 460 to Kevin. And I think the best part of the game was the end of the game, really.
Yes.
Interesting ending.
My favourite move was Love, I think.
Yeah.
But very well played game from both players. And this puts Jesse in a very strong position. 2-0.
And I think Jesse did very well to defend Love under pressure, didn't he?
Yes, I think, I don't know if we're decided about Helving, but in the end it won him the game.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Very marginal decision, and it's worked out for him, so great play.
I think one of the good things about Helving is that he played 6 tiles, essentially brought the game, in the end of the game, forward, and it forced the issue.
Yes.
It essentially forced Kevin to make an opening.
If he hadn't done that, there could have been several turns where he's having to watch for leanings and potential bonuses, so I think that was good play. I believe we're going to be watching Brett and Nigel next. Is that correct, Harshan?
Yes, so at the moment, that's correct. That game is actually in progress. So Nigel is 2-0 up against Brett Smitheram. So both semifinals are at 2-0. So the next match between the third game between Brett and Nigel will start shortly.
Coverage will start shortly.
The coverage will start shortly.
Yes. The game is already in progress.
The game's in progress.